Have you ever wondered what happens after the applause dies down? When a legendary ruler, hailed for her strength and wisdom, is left alone with her memories. This is the story of Elizabeth I, a queen who outlived everyone, but perhaps learned the hardest lessons far too late. Elizabeth Tudor, the Virgin Queen, Gloriana, she ruled England for over 40 years, a golden age of exploration, art, and national pride. She faced down the Spanish Armada, navigated treacherous political waters, and solidified England as a major European power. To the world, she was an icon of strength, a monarch who chose her country over personal happiness. But behind the carefully constructed image of a queen married to her people was a woman haunted by the ghosts of her past. To understand Elizabeth, we have to look at the two other Marys who defined her life and her reign. First, her half-sister Mary Tudor. When Mary ascended the throne, she was determined to return England to Catholicism. Her reign, though short, was marked by the brutal persecution of Protestants, earning her the infamous nickname Bloody Mary. For Elizabeth the Protestant, this was a terrifying time. She was a constant threat to Mary's throne, a living symbol of their father Henry VIII's break with Rome. She spent time imprisoned in the Tower of London, living under the constant shadow of execution. She learned firsthand how precarious life could be when you were a pawn in the game of crowns. Mary Tudor died believing her crusade was righteous, leaving a legacy of fear and a throne that fell to the very sister she distrusted. This experience forged Elizabeth's pragmatism. She saw what religious extremism could do to a nation and vowed to steer a more moderate course. Survival became her mantra. Then came the second Mary, Mary, Queen of Scots, her cousin, a Catholic claimant to the English throne with a lineage many considered stronger than Elizabeth's. From the moment Mary fled Scotland and sought refuge in England, she became Elizabeth's most dangerous and personal problem. For nearly 2 decades, Mary was Elizabeth's prisoner, a constant focal point for Catholic plots and conspiracies to overthrow her. This wasn't just a political struggle, it was a deeply personal one. There were 2 queens, 2 women, bound by blood and separated by faith and ambition. They never met face to face, yet their lives were inextricably linked. Elizabeth's counselors, men like Walsingham and Cecil, constantly pushed for Mary's execution. They saw her as a cancer that needed to be cut out for the good of the state. But Elizabeth hesitated. How could she, a queen appointed by God, sign the death warrant of another anointed queen, her own kin? It was a violation of the very divine right she claimed for herself. For years she agonized, torn between the security of her realm and the personal and moral weight of such a decision. The men around her urged caution, others demanded blood. They saw the political calculus, the strategic necessity, but only Elizabeth could feel the intimate human cost. Mary Stuart was a mirror, reflecting a different path her own life could have taken, a life of marriage, of children, of passionate and often disastrous choices. In Mary, Elizabeth saw the woman she could never allow herself to be. Eventually, after the uncovering of the Babington plot, a conspiracy that directly implicated Mary in a plan to assassinate Elizabeth, her hand was forced. The evidence was undeniable. The pressure from her council was immense. The threat to England was too great to ignore. With what was said to be a heavy heart, Elizabeth finally signed the death warrant. In February 1587, the axe fell on Mary, Queen of Scots. The silence that followed was deafening. Politically, it was a masterstroke. It eliminated the most significant threat to her throne and sent a clear message to her enemies, both at home and abroad. England rallied around its queen, and the victory over the Spanish Armada a year later seemed to be divine confirmation of her choice. The fear that had gripped the nation began to fade, replaced by a sense of security and burgeoning national glory. Elizabeth had won. She had secured her crown, her church, and her country. She outlived them all. Mary Tudor, who died consumed by a phantom pregnancy and a failed religious crusade. Mary Stuart, who went to the block believing she was a martyr for her faith. She outlived the cautious advisors and the bloodthirsty ones. She ruled for decades after the axe fell, long enough for a new generation to be born who knew nothing of the turmoil, who saw only Gloriana, the untouchable legend. But what did this victory truly cost her? As the years turned into decades, and Elizabeth grew old in her grand empty palaces, the weight of her choices settled in. Power, she had learned in her youth, was about survival. But in the quiet solitude of her final years, she discovered that survival and happiness are not the same thing. She had sacrificed everything for the crown. She never married, never had children. She famously said she was married to England, but a nation cannot offer the warmth of a husband or the comfort of a child. It can offer applause, but it cannot offer intimacy. With the deaths of the two Marys, she had lost more than just political rivals. She had lost family. Mary Tudor was the sister who, despite their differences, shared the unique, traumatic experience of being a daughter of Henry VIII. Mary Stuart was the cousin, the only other woman in her world who understood the crushing weight of a crown. In her old age, there was no one left who could speak to her as an equal. Her counselors were her subjects. Her ladies-in-waiting were her servants. Every mirror that might have reflected her own shared humanity had been shattered. There was no sister to reminisce with, no cousin to challenge her, no equal to share the burden she had carried alone for so long. She was surrounded by fawning courtiers and the machinery of state, but she was utterly, profoundly alone. While Mary Tudor died believing she was right, and Mary Stuart died believing she was chosen, Elizabeth lived long enough to know she had simply been forced. Forced to be ruthless, forced to be pragmatic, forced to choose the path of the state over the path of the heart. And that knowledge, that cold, hard truth, was her constant companion long after the political dramas had faded into historical memory. When Elizabeth finally died in 1603, England mourned a legend. They wept for the mother of their nation, the queen who had given them a golden age. They buried a monarch draped in gold and ceremony. Thanks for watching. If you found this story of power and its personal cost as fascinating as I do, forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden lives of historical figures. Let me know in the comments what you think was Elizabeth's greatest sacrifice. See you next time.